Welcome to the Fitpreneurs, the show that will help you flex your business muscles so you can make more money and live the life you really want. No more complaining, whining, or being a wimp. It's time to pump up your fitness business and push yourself beyond your comfort zone. So no girly men or lazy ladies allowed. It's time for me to do some push-ups and turn things over to your host, Simon Lovell.
Hey, this is Simon and welcome to the latest episode of The Fitpreneurs. I'm live here in San Diego and I have an amazing guest with me today. But before I introduce him, as always guys, head to iTunes and make sure you give a review. Also head to the website fitpreneurs.com where you can get loads of free content, blogs, access to webinars, and of course the free book. Now, here with me is the amazing Mike Savage, who I met. Now, if many of you already know that I'm a huge fan of Mr. Tony Robbins. And Mike, why don't you share where we met and how that happened?
Should I tell them about the sauna?
You can do.
Okay,
absolutely.
all right. So I have the privilege of working for Tony Robbins. A lot of you guys are about to get to know him. He's going to have a huge documentary on Netflix. And for those of you who already know, you know that we have a crazy environment full of people who are dedicated to helping other people, building businesses, creating success for others. And I was teaching a seminar in Fiji, and a mutual friend of ours, a guy named Joe Williams, told both of us that we were heading to the same location and that we needed to connect. And Simon came all the way across the world and landed there to take care of himself and look at some things for his business, some things that he could bring back home to the people that he works with. And we made an amazing connection on a cool island in Fiji. And we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, and so Mike is here, been hanging out, and Mike's actually come to a couple of the masterminds already. And I really wanted to get him on the show because in this episode today, we're going to be talking about the power of coaching and why that is so incredibly important. Maybe you've already got some coaching skills. Maybe you are training clients and you're working on the fitness and nutrition, but you really want to delve into proper coaching. What is it? What are some of the biggest mistakes that coaches make? Also, what are some things to look for, some key questions that you can ask?
Yeah.
And how long have you been with Tony now?
My first event with Tony was 23 years ago. I was 14 years old, and I won a ticket to the event and was able to hang out in the environment. I was mentored and trained by some of his best coaches and trainers and sales managers, and I've been a coach for the organization for just over a decade.
Yeah.
And I want to give people a context of what that means. Most people that are coaches, they go through some sort of coach training. I did that as well. And then they start their own coaching business. That's where I started. And most coaches will have 10, 15 clients at a time. And when we think about Malcolm Gladwell's principle of mastery, 10,000 hours to mastery, 10 or 15 clients is going to mean that you're going to take a little while to get to mastery. Because Tony attracts so many people, I've had the privilege of coaching anywhere from 80 to 100 people at a time in terms of a client load for the last 10 years. So I've gone through that 10,000 hours of mastery and coaching at 5 or 6 times the speed that most coaches are able to. All of the Robbins coaches do. So we've been able to immerse ourselves in this world of coaching and find out those distinctions that can really help trainers, business professionals ask the right questions to lead clients where they really want to go, but also, cut the minutia, the fear, the limiting beliefs out of helping someone really take that leap into something crazy like taking care of their body for the first time.
Now, what I love about Tony and you, which I think is very important to talk about, which is strategy is very important, but motivation is incredibly powerful. Now, you and myself spoke at Greg Reed's Secret Knock just a few days ago.
Yes.
And, the crowd was, gave you a standing ovation. It was amazing. Now, I want to talk about the power of using motivation and inspiration in alignment with coaching, because that's a reason why he's been so successful, and also you in your own coaching business too, right?
Correct. The idea that it's not just data. I mean, there's enough strategies out there today. I mean, you and I can pick up our cell phone and Google something. We'll get 100 strategies. But without the right mindset, without the right inspiration, without being regularly motivated, consistently being brought into the game, all those strategies just become one more thing you have to do. It's all about shifting that story. As Tony talks about, shifting your state. and making sure that those elements come first in order to create change for others.
Now let's wind back to when you got your first kind of break in coaching and a couple of key turning points. I talk about the timeline of our life and those key turning points that open up huge doors and different avenues from you. Maybe what's an early story that you can share with the guys that maybe they can run into their own business?
My first business actually had nothing to do with coaching. It was a comic book store. And I was, late teens. My business partner was as well, fresh out of high school with a couple of years behind us. And I had the privilege of having been through a ton of Tony stuff. I'd gone to Unleash the Power Within, had gone to the mastery events even at a young age, and specifically an event called the Competitive Edge, which was all about influence. And I found myself in an interesting position where I was starting my business and I was passionate about comic books. I went to art school, but I didn't know a thing about business.
Who was your favorite superhero?
Honestly, it was the X-Men, and at that time, it was Cyclops from the X-Men. It's transformed into Professor X. I like guys that don't have a lot of hair on their head. I'm slowly becoming him, but I like the idea that he has to use his mind. He has a handicap, right? He doesn't have his legs, so all of his power has to come from critical thinking and thinking outside of the box. And yet he's the leader. So the guy who's already considered a minority, who also has a handicap, is the guy who's actually leading the cause. And that was really inspiring. But I remember finding myself in that situation where I had this business and I had no clue what to do. Like I didn't know how to do taxes. I didn't know how to file for a business license. I just had a lot of comic books and I had enough money to open a store. So I hired some mentors. There was a mentorship program in Tampa, Florida, where I was living. And I hired two older men who were CEOs at the time, because I remember Tony said, if you want success, you have to model it. So the internet didn't have an abundance of resources back in 1998. It was still kind of young, but I managed to find a couple guys, and they stood with me for 3 years, mentoring me in business, helping me learn the steps and procedures and things that we needed to do to really put the store in the right place. And I'm proud to say, I was able to transition out of that. My business partner, Scott, runs it full time. And it's still open today. You look back in 18, 17 years later, you go, wow, that business is still standing. I think it's because I had the right mentors in place when I started. And I learned that from Tony, the principle of modeling. That was a huge turning point for me in understanding I didn't have to figure it out on my own.
Now, you're an amazing coach yourself, and you coach coaches. What are some of the biggest mistakes, but also some of the key elements that coaches need to take on board when they're working with clients?
All right, so one of the biggest mistakes I see is that people come into this business, and it is a profession, right? Coaching is no longer like the thing you do on the side. This is a profession where people are making 6-7 figures, really creating change in other people's lives. And I see the mistake of a lot of people who are just getting into coaching for the first time. They spend a lot of time on their website, on printing business cards, on putting brochures together, and then thinking that because they put their name out on the internet somewhere that 100 people are going to come find them. And when they do that, they're missing the opportunity in their local community, in their network, to be able to really be present like in their network and expand who they are, with people right in front of them. They're reaching out to the World Wide Web and they're forgetting the web that's in front of them. This weekend, somebody said, and I don't remember who the speaker was, we were at Secret Knock, and somebody said, you fish in a pond, a lake, or the ocean. And I see them go right for the ocean, skipping the pond and the lake. And I think it's a huge mistake. You want to start by building your business where you're at and then expand and understand that coaches are needed in every community. The other thing is that, they rush headlong into strategy, which is what we started talking about. They think that they have to have all the answers. And while a lot of people come to coaching for answers today, it's not Socratic anymore, it's not questions only, you still have to understand the power of questions and challenging people's beliefs and the story. I watch coaches who will coach somebody's, for lack of a better term, lower self. The self that stays in fear and limiting beliefs and stories and excuses, and forget that person hired them to coach their higher self, to have the direct conversation, to call them out, but in a tactful and productive way, and to help them move forward. And they'll get caught coaching that lower self for weeks, months, sometimes years before they figure it out.
Why do you think so many people struggle with challenging other people to be able to create those breakthroughs? Because I've always been a coach and a mentor who has called people out on their BS, and it helps me to create big breakthroughs because I want to hold people to a high standard.
Right.
Why do you think many people can't do that?
Because they're not doing it for themselves. If you're going to call somebody out and really hold them to a higher standard, you have to have that personal congruency to be able to do it. You have to be willing to face those fears. There's this great coaching book called The Dark Side of Light Chasers. And it's this whole idea that if you don't face that dark side and look, you're the king of this, really be truthfully vulnerable, then you're not going to be able to ask other people to do that. And a lot of coaches they wake up and they put on the coach in the morning, right? There's a shirt that they put on and there's a persona that they put on, and then they use that persona to post on Facebook and Twitter and create an image, but it's not really who they are. And it's hard for them to call other people out when they're not being true to who they are, if that makes sense.
And let's look at a personal trainer. Many of the guys watching maybe run a fitness business, a nutrition business, and you look at that business itself, and you've got fitness, working on the gym floor with clients, getting their body great, nutrition, but there's another key element, which is coaching, isn't it? It's coaching, and I want you to explain the real difference between that. Like, for those watching, like identifying, are you actually a coach or are you training people with fitness and nutrition? And how important is it to add that extra element?
Well, look, you and I both know that, unless you're looking to compete, right, to get to a healthy medium, you balance your food intake healthfully and there's so much knowledge today about how we can use food healthfully, and you have to have some physical activity. And if people did that at the normal recommended rate, they would be healthy people. So the strategy, the training isn't necessarily the key. To help somebody get over going to that refrigerator at 10 o'clock at night when they really want that cheesecake, but they know that they're supposed to be sticking to the meal prep plan that you've signed for them, that's their mindset, that's their psychology. And if you're not serving their mindset to create lasting health, then you're just somebody who's helping them lift a weight. You've really got to dig into their psychology. Time and time again, these programs that are out there, they get groups of people together to help them overcome their weight challenges. If you look at where these groups meet, they don't meet in gyms. They meet in support circles that are a lot like AA, and they're working on their beliefs and their story. And some of these organizations do have really decent track records, right? But it's because that's what they're addressing. They're addressing beliefs and story and psychology, and that all comes from the coaching side of things. So you have to add that element. If you want to be a true, your definition of a fitpreneur, you have to have that element in what you do.
Another big challenge that comes up a lot is, I'm working with a client and they're not doing what I asked them to do. I'm trying to get them to follow the protocol. Now, if you get into that position where you have a client and you maybe want to fire them or hold them to a higher standard, first of all, how do you effectively fire a client?
Right.
But also maybe before that happens, what are some things to look for to go, actually maybe I need to have a really powerful question, a conversation rather, and ask some really good questions before I take that to the next level. But if I ultimately do, how do I do that? Because I see so many people attach, and these people just drain them of energy, and they spend their days just thinking about this client, and they could be effectively going out and finding more, but there's so much fear around that attachment of losing the sale or
losing the finances.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they don't realize how much that energy drain is actually costing them with their clients. So we'll do both pieces. I want to address the first one, which is what happens, first before you decide maybe that it's time to let a client go or fire a client. And there's definitely reasons for that. But what happens when a client is starting to get stuck in excuses and they're not making progress? There's two or three different perspectives that I think would be valuable to cover. Number one, this is a real example, right? So the other day we were talking with one of the fitpreneurs, and this particular person is out there getting great results with their clients. But they had this thing lingering in their life around relationship that was draining their energy. And the minute they faced it and handled it for themselves, they realized that two of their clients that were hemming and hawing about re-enrolling or staying in business actually had that issue going on as well. And so, and it was nice. I had that interchange with this person you're training, and they said, look, the minute I handled that for myself. I was able to do some coaching around that with my clients, and now they're back in the game. It had nothing to do with fitness. Their hesitancy, their lack of results had to do with the fact that they were having relationship challenges at home.
And that's what you continuously need to work on yourself, so that the more that you push and grow through in all areas of your life, the more you can pick people up with the challenges that they've had.
And the minute she cleared it, she was able to see it for others and then help lift them up as well. And that was all coaching. That had nothing to do with their meal prep. It had nothing to do with their training. But now they're back rocking and rolling, and they all feel good because she didn't automatically assume that firing the client was the first step. You dug a little deeper, but you had to have personal congruency first. Then there is the idea that sometimes people resist things. And that's where coaching beliefs and coaching story comes in. You have to listen to the story and challenge it and ask people questions like, is that true? Somebody comes and says, I'm really busy. And, well, is that true? How do you know it's true? Well, when you look at your schedule, are there times where you're wasting time? And you start to dive a little deeper. We both have a mentor named Keith Cunningham, and he talks about those first, second, third, fourth level consequences. He says the first level consequence if you eat a donut is going to taste good. The second level consequence if you eat a donut is you're probably going to start gaining a little bit of weight. Third level consequence if you keep eating donuts is you're going to get a little tubby and start to have some health issues. And if we go to the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh level, it eventually leads to diabetes, amputations, death. If you don't go past that third or fourth level with your clients and really dig, you're just coaching them on the surface. And it's easy to coach on the surface. It's harder to have to dig and ask people what it's going to cost them if they continue to be busy, right? Like, what's the cost of being busy and not taking care of your health long term, right? Digging for the pain as well as the pleasure, and we'll talk a little bit more about questions, but you have to dig a little bit. Now, say you've been congruent with the client and you've done some digging and you've worked on beliefs and they still come back and they're not willing to do the work and they're not addressing the things that they really need to address to be successful, in transforming their health, then it may be time to fire them. And I learned this early on when I started coaching. I read a book by Michael Port about filling your client load. And he's a consultant, but he made a really good point. Whenever you go to the club, you're standing outside the club and you have your money and, you've got your girl with you. When Valerie and I go to the club, this happens constantly, right? We have to stand there for a minute. They look at me. They don't want to let me in. They're fine letting her in, right? But they have that velvet rope, right? And you've got to get past that velvet rope to get in the club. Well, Michael Port says you have to have a velvet rope policy on your coaching business, which is, are you filtering and deciding who you're going to let in and who doesn't get entrance to your club? Right? If they're going to be an energy drain, if they're not a fit in terms of your culture, if they're not 100% committed to having a good time and getting results, put that velvet rope down and say, hey, no entry. And if they're in the club, you have every right to kick them out. You have every right to kick them out. Most coaches, though, are afraid to do that because they're attached to the couple dollars that's attached to that client.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about something now which is incredibly important. I think so many people miss this in coaching, which is accountability and the power of that. Many people think, well, you can't get results online. Of course you should have offline experience before you delve into the online side of things, but what are some unique ways that you've seen maybe accountability applied in your business, maybe to you, and that anyone watching can apply and that can really hold their clients? Again, we're talking about holding them to a high standard. I know in Core Coach you talk about, are you showing up at bronze level, silver level, or gold standard?
Yeah, there's an amazing coach at Robin. Her name's Elaine Holland. She's fantastic. And she developed this system that most of us use now, which is to ask if a client literally is showing up at these levels. And at the onset, not 3 or 4 sessions in, at the onset of our agreement together, we discuss what level of play they're coming to. Are they going to come as a bronze? And we outline points for bronze that fit coaching. You guys would tweak that for what you do. Are you going to come at silver? Or are you going to be a gold star player? Right? When you look at the Olympics, and Tony illustrates this beautifully where he says, the person that gets bronze gets a medal and nobody remembers their name. The person that gets silver gets a medal and gets to ride in the car behind during the parade. But the guy that gets gold is in the front car and he not only gets the medal, but he also gets endorsements, right? So the person who plays at gold level is the one who ultimately gets the results they really want to change their life. When you illustrate that with clients and they commit, you have to hold them to that. You have to bring them back and say, look, how you're showing up this week is a bronze level of play. It's really time to show up at gold. What would gold look like? And remind them that, an Olympic athlete doesn't get to the Olympics and become the third, fourth fastest person in the world by working out one time, or by having that yogurt when they know they should be eating something healthy. They've got to make sure that they stay on point and they're at a gold level of play. With accountability, we do get creative sometimes. People put money on the line. I've had clients who put money in escrow, and if they don't show up for their workouts, we burn the money live. I'm not endorsing that. It's illegal. However, there are creative ways. I've heard of coaches who will have a client write a check to the opposite political party. So in the U.S., if they're Republican, they'll write a donation to the Democratic National Convention, and if they don't follow through, that check gets mailed in. Yeah. I'll tell you for myself personally, I went and hired a client of mine who was a personal trainer years ago to help me get back in shape, and it was all virtual. I worked out in his gym, but he was never there because he works all over the country, and he would meet with me and help me design workouts and meal plans every other week. And most of the time we talked over the phone, and he would write a plan. And when he was in the gym, he looked at my workouts, but most of the time it was virtual. But to keep me accountable, I gave him a $3,000 check, and I had to text message every meal and every workout for 90 days. It was a 90-day challenge. And if I missed one check-in, he was cashing that check. And he reminded me, like I'd be on an airplane and there'd be a delay, and I'd come off and there'd be a question, where's my texts? And I knew he was serious. He would cash that check. And I had one of the biggest transformations physically in my life because I put myself on the line financially. And I committed to the accountability and to playing at gold level. And if it was free, if there was no money on the line, I could have come up with 100 excuses. But when you invest in something and then you put money on the line on top of it, as an immediate loss for not showing up, something happens in your mind, especially if you're motivated a bit financially, that you're going to win at all costs.
Why do you think that many personal trainers don't shift to true fitpreneurs and get coaching for themselves when they actually are looking and going, I want to be there, I want to grow a business? In my experience, it's beliefs. They see numbers and they're like, I can't achieve it. They're skeptical. Maybe they've had something in the past where it hasn't worked out. But when you're wanting to reach the top, you've got to have someone hold your hand. But why do so many people not take that step? I believe, and tell me if you disagree, but especially for guys, it's about, wanting to get help. You want to do it all on your own. But what are some other reasons maybe? Well,
that goes back to, I think early on, just because I learned the principle that it's not weak to ask for help, right? Tony talks about modeling and seeking out mentors. That's really what you're doing. But there's a lot of guys who, if we just have an honest conversation, ego gets in the way. They want to be the expert, and they fear that if they have help from somebody else, that they're not going to be perceived as the expert with their clients. But their clients don't care. Their clients just want the results, and they're investing in that coach to get them the results. If you're not getting the clients the results and your business isn't moving the way you need to look at somebody who's done it. I see this with coaches all the time, and it's the same with personal trainers, in that they say they want to be the best at what they do, but they won't invest in learning from the best, if that makes sense. I said I wanted to be one of the best coaches in the world when I committed to this profession. And I hired some of the best coaches in the world, inside and outside of Robbins both, because I wanted a good wide perspective to be my coaches over the years. And I eat my own cooking. I have a coach to this day, right? Every great coach has a coach. Tony Robbins seeks out mentors and coaches constantly, and he's one of the best in the world, in all areas, in every area. And if you want to build your business and be a fitpreneur, not just somebody who's helping people lift weights, you've got to seek out people who understand how to build a fitness business. And, they look and maybe they fear investment, and here's the interesting thing. If they fear that investment, I guarantee you there's a direct correlation to their clients fearing paying them. That the minute they make that leap and they're congruent with what they're asking their clients to do, that business is going to show up. And we've seen it time and time again in coaching, where the minute somebody hires a coach and invests in some real training for themselves, their clients pony up. Same thing in training. The minute that fitpreneur treats it like a business and invests in it, the clients feel that. There's an energetic exchange. The clients feel it, and they're happy to invest in their health with that person.
Yeah. Let's talk about working with women versus men. What are some big differences and things to understand about, like, for example, guys coaching women,
Right.
women coaching guys? What are some distinctions and things that they need to look out for? You know, for example, you know, is it right that challenge develops the masculine,
Yes.
praise develops the feminine?
Yes.
So some things around that maybe.
You know, we're going to dive into opinion, just so you guys know a little bit, but it is that's exactly true, and that the masculine rises to challenge. And, you know, it's everybody's personal preference who they want to work with. We get women who say, I want a male coach. And we get men who say, listen, I need a female coach. I need that perspective. So people will come in sometimes thinking they know what they need. The interesting thing, though, many times is that the male coach really needs another male coach. And that female is asking for a male because it's comfortable, because they're uncomfortable getting another perspective from another female when that's really what they need. So, you know, in our model, in terms of coaching, we tell people that we have a system and a process to pair the right coach with the right client, and that they have to trust the process, that we're experts in that, and that we do an assessment, behavioral assessments, right, as well as an intake to make sure we pair them with the right person. I think in fitness, you know, if there's a guy who really wants to achieve and he needs to be pushed a little bit, he's probably going to need to be challenged by masculine energy. Right, really pushed and face, you know, other masculine energy that's going to cause them to rise. And, you know, with women, it's the same thing. It's sometimes you fear judgment from another female. You fear that if you talk about the things that you feel you want to change, that there might be, you know, judgment or perception from another female. But if you can receive that feedback from that which you fear the most, that's where your growth happens. That's your breakthrough. It's not the training. It's the actual relationship you develop.
What about male trainers maybe working with female clients? And obviously that's going to happen a lot, right?
Absolutely. They have to be aware that the way you challenge a male client is not going to be the same way you challenge a female. And you have to pour on that praise and make sure that you give them that personalized attention, because that's what they're looking for. Look, let's be honest. Women have major challenges that we could probably never understand in this world, because they're looked at and objectified. So you have to be respectful of that when you're training them, and at the same time genuinely compliment them for their hard work, the amount of time they're investing in themselves, the progress that they're making, not just the goal, but every bit of progress along the way, and make sure that you give them the nurturing that they give us in the real world every day.
And actually, we were talking the other day about using the 5 love languages as a means
Brilliant.
to be
Yes.
able to tap into what their love language is, but
Yes.
in a coaching perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Gary Chapman, amazing book on the 5 love languages. It's stellar in relationships. It's been huge for my wife and I. And you can use that with clients. The minute you know somebody's love language, if they like quality time, you're going to spend a little more time with them. You know, they're going to hear from you a little more often. If they like words of affirmation, you send them that text message when they're not expecting it to tell them they did a great job. And
Now, for the male trainers watching, you may need to be slightly careful when you take on a female client and you get them to do the love languages test, because you need to pre-frame it properly to make sure you're not hitting on them. Explain pre-framing, actually, and how important that is.
Yeah, pre-frames are huge. You know, I mentioned earlier that we use the gold, silver, bronze at the onset of coaching. That's called a pre-frame, right? So we're laying the foundation, setting a framework, pre-framing how the relationship is going to work. So a pre-frame is something that you say ahead of time to explain a process. One of my favorite quotes, and this has come up a lot lately, actually. I've been asked this a couple times. It's by Dr. Seuss. It says, you know you're in love when you can't fall asleep, because reality is better than your dreams. And the truth is, it doesn't just mean about relationships. When you're in love with your business, when you're in love with what you do, and it keeps you up at night because you're so excited about what you're doing that you can't fall asleep, that reality is better than anything you could dream about, you know you're in the right place. And I find that's true in my case with the work I get to do with Tony and the family life I have now. Way, way better than anything I could dream of. And it keeps me awake. And I see that in you as well with what you do. I mean, you're constantly go, go, go. And you know, you push yourself from 6 a.m. I mean, we're up till 1 o'clock last night. It seems like reality is better than anything you dream of too. And I think that holds true for everybody. If you're sleeping and you're not excited about what you do every day, shift it. Make the investments, do what you have to do to put yourself in that place.
Definitely. Thank you, Mike, so much. And how can people reach you?
TonyRobbins.com/coaching. have them, check out what we do at Robbins. Come to Fiji, come to Wealth Mastery, learn how to get your mindset right around finance. And I really appreciate you having me on today.
No worries. And of course, if you want to get your fitness business cranked up a gear, head to fitpreneurs.com/apply. We can check out the webinar and apply for coaching. As always, head to iTunes, give us a review, and connect with us via social media, Instagram,
Absolutely.
Facebook, Snapchat, and all of the other media. Thanks again to Mike, and we'll see you in another episode of The Fitpreneurs. Take it easy.
Guys, thanks for the killer episode. Listen, if you want to take your fitness business to the next level, eliminate your competition, create ultimate freedom, buy new houses, cars, which could blow up, travel the world, or open your own gym where you can lift really heavy weights, then head to www.thefitpreneurs.com/free call for details on how to apply for your free accelerator call. Until the next episode, hasta la vista, Fit Pros.